I've been working since I was 15. I've done 3 jobs. I have done everything I can to not take anything, and the only time that I need help, I have been completely failed. I've got Christmas coming up and I'm going to be homeless.
That's Geraldine. She's being evicted with her 12-year-old daughter and can't afford anywhere else. The government was elected, promising to make housing more affordable, and is now vowing to build, baby, build. But progress has remained slow.
Of that 1.5 million, you have no idea how many you can build in terms of social housing.
Well, it's the biggest investment in a generation.
Well, it's a pretty low bar to jump over. We've basically stopped building social homes.
Improved renters' rights are finally coming into place in May, but will they make it any easier to find and keep a home?
It does give tenants more rights. It also means that landlords can't increase the rent more than once a year. They also have to do it in line with market value. Tenants can appeal rent rises. What I would argue is that a lack of supply is the problem.
I'm Lucy Watson, and this is What You Need to Know. Our investigations editor, Daniel Hewitt, has been looking into this, as you have been for years, Dan. First of all, what exactly has Labour said that they're going to do on housing?
They've promised to do quite a lot. I think of all the things Labour promised to do when they won the election, housing is an area where they've got some pretty radical and ambitious promises. And I think we should take 2 of them for this podcast. I think one is renters' rights, which you talked about. Let's talk about that later. The big headline promise is their promise to build 1.5 million homes between now and the next election. For context, that's a really ambitious figure. We haven't built 1.5 million homes in this country since 1977. It's been a really, really long time. The Tories promised to do it and never did, never actually got close to doing it. And so that's their big headline promise. The problem is no one I speak to in the housing sector thinks they're going to meet it. And right now, progress has been pretty slow on that.
And in terms of affordable social housing, any idea of how many are in that?
No, and that's the point I really wanted to put to the Housing Secretary when I met him. I asked him how many of the 1.5 million they've so far built. He said they've built 230,000. So they're nowhere near at the moment on reaching that. He thinks they will. He thinks they are going to get there. I mean, of course, he would say that, wouldn't he? That's a politician's job. But in terms of affordable housing, which is, I mean, we talk about all the time.
I know, because I've just used 2 terms there in one sentence: affordable housing, social housing. What exactly is affordable?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because the Tories, when they came to power in 2010, essentially changed the definition of affordable housing. Traditionally, when we talk about affordable housing, we're really talking about social housing, which is kind of what formerly would be called council housing. It's it's housing owned by councils or housing associations, typically at around 50% the value of market rent. And it genuinely is the single most affordable housing for people who really need it. What the Tories did was they brought a whole raft of other types of housing into that bracket, including affordable housing at 80% market rent, so much more expensive, and also shared ownership. So people who buy a chunk of a property and a housing association will still own it. They still need a mortgage, they still need a deposit, but that actually comes under affordable housing. So it allowed the Tories to say, we've built more affordable housing than the last Labour government. I mean, that's true based on their own definition of affordable housing. So trying to pin the government down on what that means is quite tricky. I've been trying to find out for, 16, 17 months now, how many of that 1.5 million are going to be social housing. Social homes are the kind of homes that we need in this country to tackle the housing crisis. We call it a housing crisis. What I would call it an affordable housing crisis. We have 172,000 children living in temporary accommodation in England. It's the highest on record. We've got more families living in temporary accommodation and homeless than ever before on record. So the issue, the scale of the challenge for Labour is absolutely huge. Right now, when it comes to finding out what they're actually doing to tackle that, we still aren't able to know.
Dan, your knowledge on this subject is really quite astonishing.
It's also quite boring, isn't it?
And also you're able to speak so quickly about it. There's not much to you don't really take a pause for breath.
I'm trying to get a lot in.
Right, now I am going to have to, however, refer to my notes for this bit, though. London has a huge affordable housing shortage, but the government has reduce the proportion of new developments that needs to be affordable from 35% to 20%. Let's have a little listen how Housing Secretary Steve Reed explained that to you.
There are 30 odd boroughs in London. 10 of them had 0 new homes being built over the last year, and 35% of nothing is nothing. Now, I'm not prepared to speak to constituents of mine telling me they're stuck in temporary accommodation for years when there are no new homes being built at social rents at affordable prices that they could move into. So we've temporarily lowered the threshold from 35 to 20% to get the market moving again.
So I said that London had a
Yeah.
distinct problem, but so is this going to be happening across the country, or?
We're not sure at this stage. To take what Steve Reed just said, he's not wrong in the sense that what's happened in London is the housing market has basically collapsed. It's stopped. Not enough houses are being built. Private developers who have been told they have to build, whatever they build, 35% of whatever they build has to be affordable housing. They have said that the state of the economy, the cost of building means they can't afford to hit that. That's what they say. The private developers, we can't afford to hit that 35% mark. And that's why Steve Reed says 35% of nothing is nothing. They're just not building. So Steve Reed has taken a different approach to his predecessor, Angela Rayner, who, of course, resigned over her own personal housing crisis. He has basically said to developers, look, what do you need to get building again?
Yeah.
Incentivize them, reduce these targets down so they get building again. And the argument from Steve Reed, who's been a lot more pro-developer than, say, Angela Rayner was, is that you've got to just get building. And once you get building, that stimulates the economy, that brings more money into the treasury, and then we can use that money then to filter back into social housing. The problem with that is essentially saying is social housing has kind of got to wait. It's got to wait until we build all these houses and then we can start then building social homes. Right now, we need social homes. Shelter crisis, housing charities, people that look at this stuff say we need 90,000 social homes per year just to keep up with demand. We built around 10,000 in this country last year. We went down to about 6,000 a few years ago. We are nowhere near hitting the demand. The government separately, in the last budget, announced a £39 billion programme for an affordable housing programme, which 60% of that will be for social rent. But that's going to deliver about 300,000 homes over the next 10 years. So you have a Labour government that says it's going to build more affordable homes. The problem is the market is so sluggish. The concern amongst lots in the social housing sector is Steve Reed's now more concerned with hitting that 1.5 million target of building that many homes. And kind of doesn't really matter what kind of homes they are as long as he hits his target. And the problem with that is you're not going to solve the ultimate problem, which is of affordable housing. Yeah.
And also the length of time. I mean, these figures, these targets, we're talking about a decade.
Yeah.
And Geraldine, who we showed at the very, very beginning and who we heard from, she needs something right now.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me why she's losing her home? What was her situation?
So she's been renting for the last 13 years. Her daughter's 12, so it's the only home her daughter's ever known. And her landlord, who she has a pretty good relationship with, wants to sell the home. And so she was served a Section 21 eviction notice, which is called a no-fault eviction, and told she has to go. She has no real issue with the landlord. The landlord has a right to sell the home. The problem is, because we haven't got enough social housing, because we've spent the last 45 years essentially selling it off through right to buy and not replacing it, there aren't enough affordable homes through local councils, and private rents in the last 12 years have gone up massively. Rents are at record highs now. So for her, she's evicted, and in a market with abundance of affordable housing, she just finds another one. But there is no social housing for her, and there's nowhere affordable to live, and she can't afford to buy. So effectively, she's got nowhere to go. And that is being repeated.
Actually, nowhere.
And that's been repeated across the country. I might, having looked at this for the last sort of 5 years, my educated guess would be what will happen to her is that on the day, December the 2nd, that she's evicted, she will go to her local council, who she's already speaking to, who will probably end up putting her in temporary accommodation. That could be a hostel, a bed and breakfast, a hotel. It's likely to be probably an hour, maybe 2 hours from where she lives, which means it's going to affect her daughter's education. If she turns that down, the council will say to her, well, you've made yourself intentionally homeless, and it's take it or leave it, basically. That's the problem. And this is the issue, and I'm going to go back to the point about spending. Yes, the government says at the moment the economy is not in a place to spend tens and tens and tens of billions of pounds building all this social housing, but we are spending tens and tens of billions of pounds dealing with the problem of a lack of social housing. The housing benefit bill is like £24 billion a year. It's like half the size of the defence budget. You have a situation where councils in London are spending millions of pounds a week on temporary accommodation. So we are spending money on the housing crisis, but we're spending it through benefits and temporary accommodation and not on building housing.
It's like a knee-jerk reaction. We're spending
it's short term.
It's desperation, but
it's short term.
The long-term goals, that's not where the money is.
It's short term. And people in housing would say, yes, to build lots and lots of council housing like we did after the war. That will cost billions and billions of pounds. Yes, it will. Of course it will. But you are spending that anyway. So to borrow that now and to have that kind of horrible bit of time where you borrow lots of money to build housing, you will eventually get it back because that benefits bill will start to come down. The use of temporary accommodation will start to come down. It kind of requires a 10, 20-year vision for the housing market, which right now the Treasury is just not interested in listening to.
Do you feel like there is one?
A plan?
A bit like this
No.
vision?
Dealing with this crisis right now, I would say on this front, the long-term plan, that I don't think there really is one at the moment, no.
Right. We mentioned at the very beginning the Renters' Rights Act, and that is some kind of improvement, this law now. What come May next year, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, right. then it will it was passed into law last month, but come May, that's when renters will actually start seeing a difference, hopefully. That's too late for Geraldine. We're talking Christmas, before Christmas, that she needs somewhere. Would these changes ultimately have helped her? Because I know that you talked about no-fault eviction there. Yeah,
so in a way they would and wouldn't have. To be fair to the government, this is a really big radical change, and it's a bit, the Renters Reform Bill, to kind of stand back for a second, is a genuine shift in the balance of power between landlords and tenants. Right now it does favour landlords. I can already hear the emails being typed towards me.
I'm nodding.
From landlords saying, oh, right, yeah. But landlords right now do have more power over tenants, and it's that this bill is trying to shift the balance of power back towards tenants. Yes, it's not coming until May, but I think that, to be fair, it's a big change, and that sort of 7 months allows people to make those changes.
They need it. They need that.
In Geraldine's case, the answer really is no. The big change for the Renters Reform Bill is scrapping Section 21. It's scrapping the no-fault eviction, which was brought in 1988, and the idea of that was that it was trying to incentivise people to become landlords, and it gave them the right to evict a tenant through with no reason whatsoever, and only give them 2 months' notice. And in the last few years, that's caused homelessness to go up for all the reasons I said before, because you give a tenant an eviction notice, you give them 2 months to leave, there's nowhere for them to go.
Yep.
The government have scrapped that. But what they have kept, though, is Section 8 of the Housing Act, which basically allows landlords to evict a tenant if they want to sell their property.
Which is Geraldine's.
So in Geraldine's case, it wouldn't make much difference, to be honest. The difference would be you should have 4 months to look for a property rather than 2. So the eviction period has been doubled, so you'd have longer to look for a property. So the Renters Reform Bill is a genuine change. It does give tenants more rights. It also means that landlords can't increase the rent more than once a year. They also have to do it in line with market value. Tenants can appeal rent rises. At the moment, you'll find a lot of examples of tenants being asked to pay 3 months, sometimes 6 months rent up front to secure a property. All that's gone. It'll just be 1 month's rent maximum. So there are genuine changes that give tenants more rights. What I would argue is that unless you solve the ultimate problem, Geraldine's problem, which is there's not enough affordable homes for her to go to when she is evicted, it kind of doesn't really matter that much because ultimately that's the problem. A lack of supply is the problem.
Mm-hmm. Now, you did touch on, obviously, landlords just then, and they claim that the increased rights for renters will force them to sell up and leave us with even less private rented housing. Is there truth in that?
There's an element of truth to that, yeah. I mean, there's a bit of data that suggests that there's some landlords are now already exiting the market. They're selling up. They don't really want to be a landlord in this new world where tenants have more rights. I think that's inevitable. I think when you change the nature of a market, it's going to change. I think what we'll probably end up seeing is fewer what's sometimes maybe crudely called amateur landlords. So the kind of person that might have like 1 or 2 properties, they're not particularly across the rules and the laws. They pay a letting agent to kind of deal with it for them. It's essentially a little pension pot for them. And actually all these laws, they're a bit much too much of an ag for them. So, I'll just sell up and cash in. The big landlords won't be affected really by this. Essentially, what the Rental Reform Bill is trying to do is trying to filter out all those bad landlords that use the no-fault eviction notice to effectively raise the rent above what is reasonable or just refuse to make repairs. So if you have a leaky property right now and things keep breaking, you go to your landlord and say, can you fix this, please? Right now, they can just give you a Section 21 notice, kick you out and get a new tenant in. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing the tenant can do about it. In a world where that's not allowed, I'm not sure what a good landlord has to fear from it. If they want to sell the property, they can still do that. If they want to move into the property themselves, they can evict the tenant. If they want to move a family member in, they can still do it. So I think if you're a good landlord, I'm not quite sure what the problem really is with this. I think landlords would say actually the bigger problem for them is the kind of changes that have been made over the last few years in the tax, the way that they're taxed on the money they make off rent, and the way that the Treasury has been messing around with their portfolios. The renters reform bill, I wouldn't really worry too much about it. I don't think if I was a landlord. I would just say though, I think the ultimate problem is you can tinker around the edges with a lot of this reform, but if you don't build enough affordable housing, and landlords then, yes, they exit the market, you then do have the problem with supply. The problem here, all roads lead back to a lack of supply, which has been the fault of successive governments back to the 1980s.
Dan, it's so good to talk to you about this. It really, really is. You are an absolute aficionado on it. You can find more analysis from Dan and all our team at itv.com/news and our YouTube channel. Until our next quick briefing, thank you for joining us.